Welcome to the Talent Equation Podcast. If you are passionate about helping young people to unleash their potential and want to find ways to do that better, then you've come to the right place. The Talent Equation Podcast seeks to answer the important questions facing parents, coaches, and talent developers as they try to help young people become the best they can be. This is a series of unscripted, unpolished conversations between people at the razor's edge of the talent community who are prepared to share their knowledge, experiences, and challenges in an effort to help others get better faster. Listen, reflect, and don't forget to join the discussion at thetalentequation.co.uk. Enjoy the show.
Well, delighted to be online again with a previous guest on the podcast, repeat performance, Sam Jarman. Welcome back.
Hi, Stu. How you doing?
I'm good. Very, very busy. Coaching week has been happening, so lots of things going on. Quite a lot of interesting projects. Went to see a really fascinating project that the ECB are running that we've supported around encouraging more South Asian women to get involved in coaching cricket in particular. Some fantastic stories emerging from that. So yeah, yes, it's been a busy week. What about you? What's happening?
Just a lot of cricket going on at this time of year. We've got a wellbeing and performance program which we're running for Buckinghamshire cricket at the moment, which is talking about principles of wellbeing to obviously the young players, but also parents and coaches, which is really exciting, getting a sort of a consistent message across to everybody there. Playing a bit of golf, talking to a lot of coaches, talking to a few players. Obviously the rugby boys, it's pre-season, starts for them next week in some cases, so it comes around. It keeps going.
It does indeed. So, in terms of today's kind of key discussion topic, you were framing this with me before we jumped online around, I guess you call it the so what question. So I'm probably going to leave it to you to sort of introduce that area, and then we'll see where our conversation emerges, as always.
Okay, so the question I get a lot when I talk about this different idea in terms of how the mind works and how that is relevant to coaches and players, it comes back to the so what question, which is, well, yeah, I get that it's helpful to understand how the mind works, but how is that actually going to play out in terms of improving my coaching or improving my performance on the field or improving my life off it. So what I thought it might be interesting to do today is for, you're out there talking to coaches day in, day out. So maybe explore some of the problems which you find that coaches are having, and how the discussion we've been having around the nature of consciousness, the nature of experience, might give coaches and players a different perspective on those problems and allow them to come up with different answers to the ones that they may be coming up with at the moment.
I think that's that's a good way of looking at this. I wonder if, though, I recommend anybody who has come into this episode and is thinking, what the hell are we talking about? It's probably worth searching back for our previous episode, which I will link to in the show notes to make it easier for people to do. Cool. But I wonder if you wouldn't mind, just as a kind of setup, is to almost, I guess, do a bit of a recap around some of the fundamentals that we're talking about around this idea of a alternative nature of consciousness and what you might call non-duality and all those sorts of things. I know it's difficult to do in like a potted history, but I imagine you've got this down by now.
I'll do my best, mate. So what the current paradigm which we're living in is the idea that our reality is material. So there is something out there which we experience through our mental processes, so through mind. So mind could be described as the medium of everything that you've ever known, seen or felt, and our experience only happens through mind. So when a coach talks about changing the environment, or when we talk about coaching being contextual, it's relational. So whether it's a player in relation to another player, or a team in relation to another team, or a player in relation to his environment, how do we know that experience? What is allowing us to be aware of what is happening around us? And the current model is that there is something out there which is physical, real, if you want to put it like that. And we perceive that, we experience that through our perceptions, our feelings, our thoughts, our sensations. And then our brain somehow makes a model of that. And then our actions are based on that model that our brain has created. And what we're postulating here is that there's actually no evidence for that world outside of our experience. And this comes down to the so what question, because there are some profound implications for us when we, as I say, make this explanatory abstraction of a world beyond our experience, which I believe can, if we understand it, if we're open to a different explanation of what reality is, it makes it much easier to solve some of the problems around coaching, around player performance, around mental health, than we're currently coming up with at the moment, which are based on this idea that there is a world out there, it is physical, it is real, and our thoughts and feelings are, to a certain extent, determined by that world, either in our reactions to it, or actually by the world being able to affect how we think and feel from a moment to moment basis.
But you're not trying to suggest necessarily, and this is I think quite a fundamental point that I think often people maybe get a bit tripped up by. You're not trying to suggest that what is perceived to be the real world, so to speak, is just a figment of our imagination. All we're saying is, if I understand you correctly, is the only thing we know is what we perceive.
Yeah.
Correct? And so whether the outside world is real or not, or imagined, doesn't really matter, because the only thing we know is what we perceive.
Absolutely. Now, there is something out there, and again, it's because we can't prove anything beyond our experience. Whether you're going on the basis of science, or whether you're going on some other explanation of what is actually out there, it's an assumption. It's an explanatory abstraction. So, as I say, because all we know is experience, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, sensations, any concepts that we have of what is out there beyond that are just that, they're concepts. We have no way of proving whether they're real or not. So,
well, yes, but I can imagine, right, that I've got like alarm bells going off in my brain. So I will be. It's easy for me now to play the devil's advocate, because there'll be people out there who are going, "What?"
Yeah,
and because I think we have become very, very. When you talk about evidence-led coaching, for example, and we hear it in other fields as well, we've become very, very heavily guided towards science being the explanation for everything. And I'm not being anti-science here at all. Likewise. But what I'm saying is you have to recognize that science is always going to be our best explanation for our experience.
Exactly.
And it's just I guess a way of making sense of or interpreting what we're essentially saying. Look, we have these experiences, and continuously with science, what we're trying to do is to try and help to identify that whether our experiences are just our experiences or they are something that's then connected that other people have experiences of too. So I think it's important to stress that, isn't it? Because this isn't like an anti-science thesis. It's just saying let's understand what science actually is.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily an objective truth as such. It's just our best explanation at the moment.
That's exactly right. So, what is science? Science is a method of investigating the world around us. Mm-hmm. It allows us to define and model patterns and regularities within the environment. So, experiments are an important part of that methodology. We ask a question of nature. We conduct an experiment to frame that question. For example, at what temperatures does water boil at sea level? An inquiry is made. Heat source, water, nature comes back with an answer. So, by observing and recording these regularities, we can predict how phenomena will unfold in the future. And that's kind of what's happened over the last 200 years. Our progress has largely been based on that process. But what science can't do is tell us what something fundamentally is. So every model of reality has to have something at its base, which is its foundation. And science can't actually tell you what that is. It's relative. It can only tell us how one object or phenomena is related to another object or phenomena. So, you have to have a frame of reference. The current frame of reference would be, I guess, the standard model of subatomic particles. We're kind of, quantum physics is the place where we're at now in terms of what is the basis of science. Yeah. And if you actually read about quantum physics, the world that they're describing in terms of these subatomic particles, it's actually weirder than what I'm trying to describe here, because it's fields of energy, it's packets of quanta. It is not solid objects like tables, human beings, goalposts, football pitches, hockey balls. It's just not that. So, as I say, our idea of what reality fundamentally is, whether you base it in terms of what I'm suggesting, which is, I guess you'd call it a metaphysical idealism, which is that reality is purely mental, or that reality is, science would say, so quantum physics is or a materialist would suggest that science should be the basis for us determining what reality is. Both of those ain't what you and I are looking at now.
Right. So you're not being you're not being metaphysically idealistic, nor are you being materialistic.
Well, I again, what I believe is kind of irrelevant, and this is again what a large proportion of what I'm saying here, which is that there is only one thing that human being can know, and this is Descartes. It's I know I exist. Yeah. So because there is,
the lights are on.
Yeah, because there is consciousness, I know I exist, and that's all I know. But on top of that, all I have are my perceptions, my sensations, my thoughts, my feelings, but they are all known by this knowing, by consciousness, by this idea that I exist. So what we believe, actually, as coaches and as human beings, if we fundamentally continue to question that all the time, we come back to this idea of, well, all that we know is that we know. And unfortunately, what we do as coaching and as human beings, we actually get stuck on our beliefs. So we have a belief, we rationalize it, or we evaluate the evidence which is coming from our perceptions, and we draw a lot of conclusions from that. And then from those conclusions, we make assumptions about other things, and then that's how our worldview is formed, how our perception of reality is formed. And it's just, as I say, all I'm saying is that, what I believe, what you believe, is actually just that. It's belief. It's just a thought. But where we go wrong is where we take that belief to be true, and then we get attached to those beliefs, and that's where humanity ends up in a bad state. And some people would say the bad state that it's in, because we get hooked on these beliefs.
I suppose some of these ideas, I suppose, around or beliefs are often stem from our intuitions. So, like you say, because we're obviously we take in information from around the world, from what's around us. We perceive either through other people or from environments or other sources, media, etc., and those sources of information, science, those sources of information we package together, and then essentially, in some cases, that then, I guess, forms our intuitive understanding of how the world works. Well, actually, no, sorry, the way around. It becomes it becomes like a reaffirming narrative about how
Absolutely.
The world is.
Yeah.
And then what we lose sight of potentially is our intuitions.
Exactly.
And I suppose that's one of Danny Kahneman's theses, isn't it? Which is too often what you might call, I think it's system one, isn't it? The rational part, where we're trying to make sense of stuff, and we're using evidence and rationality as a means by which to make decisions about certain courses of action. Sometimes act against what would be something that was intuitive.
Exactly.
And so I think what I'm trying to say here is that we often are trying to find a way to allow our intuitive understanding of the world and reality, or instead of say reality, I think I'm going to use the word experience. Our intuitive understanding of experience, or our intuition about experiences, kind of almost get a little bit blocked by rationality.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that rationality is wrong, because sometimes it's the interface between intuition and rationality that gives us the path. But too often, what we consider to be our rational responses are actually incorrect.
Yeah. Because of our beliefs,
which are created by, like I said, these various different information sources that we receive from others.
So, as I say, science can't tell us what anything fundamentally is. That's a job for philosophy. And if I was going to recommend something to coaches, it would be to by all means read science, by all means watch, read the scientific studies, but also read some philosophy, because, as I say, the human beings have been asking three questions for thousands of years, essentially. What is the nature of reality? Who am I? And what is the meaning of life?
Mm-hmm.
And those three questions, to my mind, can't be answered by science. So, again, coming back to the so what question, a lot of what we're doing as coaches is it comes back to those three questions. We don't express those explicitly in many of our coaching sessions, but to have a really good understanding, or to have to have given some thought to those questions, is going to help. Because what is our role as coaches? Well, I think I've heard you say that you want kids and people to have the best experience of sport that they possibly can. That's what kind of most of us are about. So if it's all about us helping people have a better experience, how can we do that if we don't have a really good understanding of the true nature of experience and how that experience is created? And that's what this is about. That's the so what question. If what we're saying is we want people to have a great experience of sport, well, it's going to help us if we understand the nature of that experience.
And your thesis and the basis of our conversation is that you believe, or your experience is telling you that the way people interpret that is coming from the wrong place in the first place. Is that right?
Yeah, because this is where we come back to this question of materialism or idealism, because our conditioning, our cultural conditioning, our societal conditioning is that our experience is coming from a material physical world. And I'm suggesting that that's not true. I'm suggesting that our experience is mental, is perception, it's sensation, it's thoughts, it's feelings.
Isn't it possible that it's both?
It's possible. It's possible. But what I think we're looking for is if we say it's possible, again, we're then having to postulate the existence of a material world beyond our experience.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, well, what's the point of that if experience is all we know?
Okay, I see. Okay. So actually what you're saying is, let's start from that place.
Yeah.
Wherever we arrive at in terms of, so let's reframe this from the perspective of, instead of saying there is a real world or there is a world that's beyond our awareness or consciousness, and that affects us, and we have to deal with its effects and find ways to deal with its effects. Instead of starting from that perspective, let's start from we have an experience and we have awareness and consciousness, and that's the only thing that we know is for certain.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so if we're starting there, then let's examine the nature of that
Beautiful.
consciousness and awareness, and how we are viewing the rest of all the other stuff that goes on around us, and let's view the different ways in which we can view it. You know, there's a lot of ways of viewing what's happening out there. So let's start within, as opposed to
start out there,
out and deal with out to in. Let's start with in to out. Yeah.
Perfect. That's exactly that. Because what again? So let's bring it back to sport and coaching. Why do people play sport? People play sport because they love the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So
most of the time.
But,
no, but you're right.
Yeah, mate, I'm a Tottenham fan, so I've had both ends of the experience over the last few weeks. But that's why we play. Yeah. We play because it moves us. We feel something, and we like that feeling. We want more of it. So that conditions the body and the mind. Mm. If what is the purpose of sport? I would suggest the purpose of sport is the same as the purpose of life, which is to find happiness. Mm. And we all know the experience of happiness. We've all had that on a sports field or on a whatever activity we do, and that resonates deep within us at the level of experience, and we want more of it.
Yeah.
So if we say that, okay, that's what everybody is looking for, that then explains the nature of team spirit. It explains the nature of 80,000 people in a stadium and having an amazing experience through that shared experience, that connection between those people, because we're all looking for the same thing. And then we connect that out to, well, that's what bonds a team within its community. It's what bonds a community within its nation. It's what then bonds a nation between what we might call the Olympic movement would describe as the world, the universe. It's one thing that we are sharing, which is this shared experience, it's consciousness. And that's why sport feels great, because it's an expression of that shared experience, and we love that feeling. So that's what we go looking for.
So often, I think people often talk about the fact that, you know, sport's great because it brings connection and all those sorts of things. But actually what we're saying here is that there's something inside us that is looking to tap into this sensation of like you say, a shared consciousness or a shared experience, And so because when we tap into that shared experience with others, it gives us a sense of well-being, that we're continuously looking for scenarios and seeking environments where we can tap into that sensation of sharedness, let's call it. And sport and play provide that.
Absolutely. But again, the crucial thing though is to know that, and you described it well there, but I just want to re-emphasize it, that's in us already. That's our true nature. That's who we are.
Yeah.
And so when sport brings that, sport doesn't bring it, it just allows us to experience our true nature.
Because going back to the point I was making earlier on about our rationality, you know, the rational, that actually often, because it's so busy trying to interpret and make sense of what it perceives as being this outside world, it often is getting in the way of allowing that true sense of experience to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting in the way of it.
Exactly, because as I say, so we've got this idea that a world out there exists. That's our perception. We feel happiness, and we attach those feelings, which have actually are innate, to an event, a situation, a circumstance, or an object which appears to be in the outside world. So we make this, again, exactly what you're just saying, the rational mind makes this connection between the feeling of happiness with winning a rugby match. So now the intellect says, right, happiness comes from winning, therefore I want more of that. I want to win. I have to win. That's where feelings.
But that's just the rational mind then going there, isn't it?
Exactly.
Saying, this is where I get happiness from.
Exactly.
But actually, happiness doesn't necessarily come from that point. Happiness is coming from this shared experience with others.
It's coming from within. Now, as I say, the shared experience with others is one manifestation of that feeling. It's the feeling of love. When I'm kind of talking about this experience of awareness, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, you can put different words to it. You could call it happiness, you could call it love, you could call it peace, you could call it well-being. They're all kind of words for, I would suggest, words for a similar intuition, a similar knowing, a knowing of our own being. The problem comes, and this is where so much of what is going on in the world is caused by us attributing that feeling to an experience out there somewhere, which we believe it's come from an event or another person or an attainment or an object. And we're projecting our feelings onto those things, and then the rational mind, the seeking starts. So we have to be seeking. So the human condition, if you want to put it like that, is one of two things. It's either seeking happiness or it's resisting things that cause unhappiness. If you write down a list of things that we do, you can put all of those into either that one of those two categories.
But given that there's almost I hesitate to use this phrase, but there is this instinctive drive within humans to seek or resist.
Yeah.
And I suppose it goes back to the idea of let's obtain stuff for survival.
Yep.
And let's avoid stuff that will threaten our survival.
Yep.
And they're kind of two primal instincts that you kind of come into the world with. But given how powerful they are you sort of suggesting that we can move beyond those primal instincts?
Again, without getting too deeply into nature nurture, there are again they're instincts, but they are instincts which are built, getting into a kind of a, they're built on a fundamental misunderstanding, I would suggest, which is that the body and the mind are who we really are. They are a limited finite entity. So which needs to be enhanced by seeking stuff or protected by resisting stuff. Is basically, that's what you're kind of saying there. That again, that makes perfect sense, but again, I would suggest that that's part of the illusion that the human condition is, which is that is who we really are. When I'm saying that's not actually our experience. Our experience is that we experience the body and the mind in the same way that we experience an outside world.
Yeah.
But it appears that it's the body which is the subject and the mind which is the subject, and then there are objects out there, but that's not how we experience it. We experience our thoughts, we experience our bodies, we experience pain, we experience pleasure. There is something that is experiencing those things. And my question is, well, is that what you describe as the body mind, or is that awareness or consciousness? And then that brings the question, well, who am I really? Again, it brings us back to one of those three questions. Who am I? What is the nature of reality? Who am I? What is the purpose of life? All of those things are tied up in that exploration. And again, I'm not sure that we have an answer to it beyond the answer which you come to, which is that I'm aware, I know that I know.
So I guess how this all circles back to our sports experience, what you just touched on a minute ago, is around this idea of winning. And so I suppose fundamentally, one of the challenges we face, and this is, I guess, the world over, is there's this challenge that I think a lot of us are facing, which is there's a sort of school of thought which is saying that there is life, and life looks like this, and there's no way of changing the way life looks. And so there is a belief that the sports experience can be used as a means by which to teach or prepare young people for life. And the thing I often hear is, kids need to learn to compete. They need to learn to win and to lose, because in life there is winning and losing, and unless they can deal with winning and losing, they won't like it. They won't be able to cope. And life is competitive and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's based on this idea that the way life is it has to be that way. There is no other way for life to be, which is completely incorrect.
Absolutely.
Because whatever we think about the nature of reality, how we shape our experience is entirely within our control. And there are cultures out there where competition is completely, they have got no concept of competition. The only thing they have is collaboration and cooperation. Exactly. And if we were to suggest competition in the form that we're talking about, they would just completely go. So culturally, that's just a cultural artifact or a culturally resilient belief that the nature of human existence is competition. Now, having said that, and if you think about like the human experience being driven by competition, it's all been based on this idea of acquisition and gain and seeking, and
Materialism.
exactly, which is driven by two major drivers. One is, if I have that, then I will be happy.
Yep.
And secondly, if I have that, I will be able to survive more effectively. So therefore, I'm less likely to die. So there's those two constant drivers. And this is what has created war. This is what's created all of human conflict and all those sorts of things.
Yep.
And there is an alternate reality to that. There is 100% an alternate reality to that. But some people would say, well, you're just being an idealist. No, look, the world is the way the world is, and we need to prepare kids for that. And I would say, whether that's right or wrong, whether preparing children for a life that is going to look in a certain way is right or wrong, is the sports experience, which is one of the few experiences where we can transcend so-called, in inverted commas, real life, is that the place where we genuinely want to take get young people to have to go, right, well, we're going to make your sports experience just like your life experience, or the likely life experience you're going to have, because otherwise it has no value. Because the only value for this surely is as a preparation for the rest of the world. And I guess that comes back to the playing fields of Eton and muscular Christianity, and this idea that sport is a way to prepare people for battle or prepare people for, whatever it might be. So
all of that stuff,
all of that, garbage really, or working in industrial. But then there's a flip side to that, and there's another side to that, which is that sport is the opiate of the masses. It's a way of subduing the people, because otherwise they might rise up and question their living conditions during the Industrial Revolution. You've got all these sorts of historical narratives around what sport does, but all of them are based on sport as a means by which to either escape a horrific reality or prepare for an equally horrific reality, right? And cope, deal with. Whereas what you're sort of saying is, well, actually, maybe that's completely the wrong way for us to consider about the sports experience, because sport should be, and really, should be one of the, and is one of the few places that is a refuge from that. And by layering all this artificiality of cups and shields and winning and losing and everything else on top of it, and justifying it because of there's this other reality, is a completely flawed ideal. Because we should just say, look, sport is sport, and it's and intrinsically it's about creating connectedness and shared consciousness
and happiness.
And happiness is derived from that sense of connectedness.
No, happiness is
just happiness.
Happiness is just happiness. So
it's tapping into happiness, and most of the time, most of the time, we're stopping ourselves from tapping into happiness.
Absolutely, that's the key. It's understanding that happiness, well-being, love, connection. That's who we are. That is our being, if you want to put it like that. And when we talk about values in sport, that's what we are talking about. Those innate human values of, as I say, love, happiness, peace, joy, enthusiasm, connection. That those are why kids play. And it's really funny that we kind of think we need to teach kids how to win and lose, because if you watch really young kids playing, they're winning and losing and dealing with it wonderfully well. There's no, they're disappointed when they lose and they're happy when they win, but 5 minutes later they're over it and they're doing something else, or they've started another game. So again, the idea that we need to teach kids how to win and how to lose, I don't see that. So what we get confused is, so the values, as I say, that I believe are our innate human values, we then get those mixed up with the value, what you've just described, which is the values that society has, which are actually quite different from those. And sport becomes a mechanism for imposing society's values onto children and onto people, rather than drawing out those innate human values, which is what it should be for, which is what it is. That's what a game is. It allows us to express who we really are. And as I say, that's the confusion that is there. Like you say, our cultural and societal conditioning has values, and sport doesn't exist in isolation. It exists within society, within our culture, and it's a great question to kind of, or an investigation to have. Is, well, look, the values that I'm trying to, or as a coach, my values and the values that I'm espousing to my team, are they true values, as I would put them, those true innate human values, or are they values that I've picked up as beliefs from society and from the culture, and I'm then trying to impose them onto people?
Yeah, so it's not things that we value, it's things that we should value.
Yeah,
because others have told us we should.
Exactly.
So, but okay, so here's the kind of issue though. So people are, if this experience, so there is this experience, and when we can find a place where we can have a shared experience with it, and just going back to your point about the winning and losing, and actually this is why you mentioned this by the kids who like they've moved on. That for me is the evidence of this.
Yeah.
So the doing, the activity is where the value is, and it's where they can create this thing. And if you look at they might have won or lost, and then 5 minutes later they've moved on, and all the adults are still annoyed, but the kids have moved on, and the adults get annoyed at the kids for not being annoyed. You're not annoyed enough, right? Why aren't you annoyed like me? I'm really annoyed because I've been culturally taught to be annoyed, because apparently it matters. You should be annoyed too, and I'm going to teach you that you need to be annoyed.
Yeah. Let's have an inquest about it, so that we can share our annoyance. We can delight in shared annoyance.
And they're like, reveling in it, and teaching children, like, and taking away their childhood and their innocence by saying, you need to be annoyed by this. Actually, this is serious stuff. And this is happening younger and younger.
Yeah, just one quick thing there though, because we're kind of we've kind of almost got into a little bit of, and it's very easy to sort of demonize that. Again, it's really one of the things that I've shared with coaches that's been kind of most helpful is again looking at, if human beings, again going back to this idea that what every single human being wants is happiness. Mm-hmm. That's what a parent wants most of all for their child. If you could give one gift to your child, what would it be? That they would be happy. So a parent or an adult who is, again, maybe acting in a way that we would see as not necessarily helpful, you have to just remember that they're doing it from the basis of believing that their happiness and their children's happiness will be served by being by winning, and that that in the future their happiness depends on them learning something from this experience that they've had. And
I'm not sure I 100% agree with that. I think you might be right in some cases, but I think in a lot of cases it's actually just a visceral response, in the sense that through conditioning,
that's it.
I as an adult have placed importance on this childhood experience. I've created an artificial construct that defines this as now having importance. I've now got an emotional connection with the outcome of it, and my sense of happiness and well-being will be derived from the outcome. And I will convince myself that my child's sense of happiness and well-being will also be connected to that outcome.
Absolutely.
And so therefore, if that outcome does not materialize through the vagaries of luck or the bounce of a ball, or because one child happened to be looking at the aeroplane flying overhead so the ball went in the goal, we're going to be annoyed for the rest of the day about that. And so I think what I'm trying to say is that actually, so firstly there's that one, and then like I said, 5 minutes later kids have moved on because they're just going on to their next experience.
Exactly.
They've got other people there that they want to have a shared connection with, and they move on to it. So then the other option though, and this is where you see the alternative of that, right, which is when the successful outcome comes, right? And you can see this in even in elite sports contexts, right? But even in a child sport context, right? So the so the loss, and we feel miserable, right?
Yeah.
So then there's the winning, okay, and the outcome is what we hoped would make us happy, but the sense of happiness is literally fleeting.
It's momentary.
And then there's a sense of emptiness.
Yeah.
Like, well, we've done that. We've achieved this thing.
Yeah.
And this was going to make us happy.
Yeah.
But it hasn't really made us happy.
No, because we've attacked.
Yeah.
So again, what's happened there, as I say, going back to seeking and resisting, and that's why a big game feels big, if you know what I mean. So basically, the big game is built up in our minds to be this amazing whatever, and the seeking around that is really, really strong. So a player wins a major golf championship or a huge match, rugby match or a football match, and the seeking and the wanting just falls away, and that's the moment of ecstasy. That's the moment of release, whatever it is. And that feels amazing. It's addictive because all of these brain chemicals get released, and that it just feels amazing. But like you say, if you believe that feeling came from the event, well, all of a sudden the event is receding in the rearview mirror, and then what?
Yeah, and so that, and the reason that's really dangerous, I think, as well, is that what we've lost is, right, that the euphoric sensation of brain chemicals should come from the act, from being part of this shared experience, right? This thing that we're trying to tap into, right? Fleetingly we unlock it, and sometimes we unlock it because we convince ourselves that we've achieved something that was worth it.
Yeah.
And then it's gone.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, I think we should be reframing this and saying, look, there's this experience of play, right? Yeah. That allows us to tap into this sensation of either individual connectedness with just the sensation of experience, or the connectedness with others and a shared experience.
Yeah.
I call that flow, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's fleeting, but when we connect into flow, right, you get all those same sensations, right?
Yeah.
But because we create all these artificial constructs, it stops us getting there so
Absolutely.
much. So the only time we get it is when we achieve our artificially created goal.
Yeah.
And then it's gone, and then you think, how am I going to get that back again?
Yeah.
And now you have to go through a season of striving to get that fleeting moment.
Exactly.
Or game to game or whatever.
So what is flow? Flow, like you say, flow is the experience that every athlete will tell you is the ultimate sporting experience. That's what most people are playing sport for. They've had that experience where everything has just in the moment has been perfect. It's a moment of beauty. It's a moment of truth. It's a moment of you can't describe it because it just can't be described. It's pure awareness. I would describe it as
experience. Yeah,
exactly. What's happened there? Well, what's happened in that experience is that Sam has disappeared, or Stuart has disappeared. Yeah. We are one with the game. We've become absorbed in the game. The moment unfolds in the only way that it can, and then retrospectively, Sam reappears. A thought called Sam. All the ego is a thought. Has come back, and Sam finds himself standing under the goalpost with the try on the ground, and the crowd going wild, going, "Oh blimey, I did that!
Yeah,
yay, hooray!" But in that actual moment, Sam wasn't there because all that was there was consciousness, was awareness, was experience.
Yeah,
and that, like you say, is the essence of flow. And as I say, if flow can only be achieved when Sam isn't there, there's nothing that Sam can do to get himself into flow because
and that's the ironic thing is that you actually, the more you try to get into flow, the further away flow goes.
Exactly. Because the separate self, Sam, the separate self, is removed from the experience or is separate from the experience. So I can't get into something if I'm separate from it.
As a little aside, it's just made me laugh. But before we came on, we were talking because we've both got spaniels, and I've got a new puppy called Flo, and actually, she's like that because the more I try to get her to come to me, the further away she goes.
Mate, yeah, that's spaniels for you.
That's a great metaphor. I should stop seeking and trying to bring her to me and allow her to come.
Indeed, sausages are the way forward.
There isn't a treat in the world, Sam, that can
really
pull Flo back from another dog's company.
Mate. Well, there you go. Shared connection. You see,
shared connection. She's in Flo playing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
why should I try? Why should I try and control that?
You can't control it, mate. I mean, that's the other thing. It's because the illusion of control is a creation of ego. It's a creation of the separate self, and this again, you and I have had a number of conversations around this. I'm happy to go into it now, but we can do it another day. This idea of control and of free will, this is intrinsically linked. This is really, really linked to this because, again, the idea that we're pointing to is that of oneness, of that there is one fundamental reality, which is consciousness. There are not two. Non-duality, there are not two. For there to be choice, for there to be free will, there would need to be a chooser and a chosen. And I can't see how that's the case if what we are pointing to is true. So, as I say, when we talk about the idea of control, the idea of choice, the idea of decision making, the idea of free will, choices are made and decisions are made, but that there is no controller or controlling entity present at that moment. What happens is something happens, and then we insert a chooser in a thought the moment afterwards.
So, do you know what? I'm going to try and make sense of what you've just said.
Please do.
Using dog metaphor. But actually, it is actually quite interesting because only recently I've discovered. I mean, I think with a lot of dog training, because she's been to puppy classes and stuff like that, very much it's moved away from the idea of kind of punishment and stuff like that. And certainly, she's not very responsive to that unless she does something that's going to maybe be potentially dangerous or something to another or to whatever. So a lot of the dog training is now around, the idea of reward and treat. But even that for me is still a bit coercive because it's sort of saying, right, if you behave in this way, you get this treat. You behave in this way, you get this treat. Now, what happens if they don't behave in this way? Well, you don't get a treat, but we're not going to. But anyway, so interestingly, what I found with kind of trying to learn with Flo, the dog, is that what you do is, so she's having an experience, and that experience is innately pleasurable. You can see it. She's absolutely in ecstasy playing with these other dogs. And the idea that I'm going to say, come and have some sausage. And she's like, well, that's just not as pleasurable, I'm afraid. I don't know that. And I'll probably get it later anyway. So what I've discovered is, squeaky ball, right? So the only way to kind of get Flo to move from one state of ecstasy to another, or to move somewhere different, is to place another either equally or better sense of play and ecstasy. So squeaky ball, squeaky, oh wow, that's fun too. I'm going to go over to that. And I do find now what she's doing is she comes to squeaky ball, and she goes to go back to dog, and she comes to squeaky ball. Oh, I can't really make my mind up. And then eventually she comes to squeaky ball. So what's quite interesting about that, if we're going to use this from a kind of coaching kind of scenario, is, and I guess this is kind of what sort of a lot of my thesis around the whole idea of sort of constraints led or ecologically driven or experience led, coaching, is that really, as we're guiding somebody on a learning journey, we're trying to avoid where we can from stepping in and kind of breaking this moment of shared awareness, shared experience, shared consciousness by basically just going from one shared experience to another. And the collective pleasurability of an experience will guide these individuals towards certain courses of action.
Yeah.
Now, that's very different from this puppeteer coercive. I'm going to control what they do by putting in rewards, and I can't say I've got that right, because I'm still sometimes in the treat punishment kind of dynamic, and it's evolving, but it's quite difficult to break free from.
I think it can be helpful to go again, flip it around from kind of back to the original conversation we had, which is this idea that we are one. There is no a coaching relationship appears to be a subject-object relationship. There's the coach and the person that's being coached.
Yeah.
If you flip that around and go, no, actually, that's not how it is. There is a single shared experience.
Yes. And I am part of that.
And I am absolutely part of that. That's again, and this is where it's really interesting, going back to our conversation about quantum physics. There's a guy called Werner Heisenberg who discovered that particles are never where they should be. They are only ever where they are. And that depends on whether they are observed or not.
Right.
And you find this with dogs and children, is that dogs and children behave very differently depending on whether they're being observed or not. So this idea that there is separation there, and again, if we can turn that around and say that there is only one, there is one shared experience, and we are both part of that, we are all part of that, that all of a sudden, I say, it looks different, because there is no coercion, there is no punishment, there is no, it's just unfolding in the way that it was going to unfold. That's again where we see what quantum physics is pointing to, and what this idea of a metaphysical idealism is pointing to, which is that the world is mental. Because, as I say, quantum physics is actually saying that the subatomic particles of which the world is apparently constructed, if there is a material world, are behave differently depending on their context and the observer, if you want to put it like that.
I suppose the difference for me, and this is, so I've said to you in the past that I sort of struggle to get into that place where, the idea of the reality is almost an illusion. And I know you're not quite going that far, but I think what I can get on board with is the idea that reality is no more than a set of perceived experiences.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that we know is real is, like you say, the lights are on, and we're perceiving stuff.
Yep.
Right. And then the bit that I think we've and so that is our objective reality.
Yeah.
Now, whether anything else, whether there are subatomic particles or not, kind of doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
It does. It obviously does. But to us, it doesn't necessarily have to, because just because there is a reality doesn't mean that, and just because other human beings act in certain ways or decide to place value on things and all those sorts of things. And I actually think it's probably worth just keeping this at the level of human interaction, because I think when you sort of go beyond that into, is a rock sort of thing, so it goes a bit too far for me. So, but in terms of human interaction, there are things that some humans think as being reality. There's no changing them. Americans worship, oh God, for my American audience, but not all Americans, some British as well, but a lot of Western society worships on the altar of capitalism. On the basis that is the only reality, and any sense of moving away from that reality is almost like blasphemy. And you see it like with this debate around the health service and things like that. I don't want to get into politics, but you see it. People, how dare you even suggest for a second that an ultra-capitalist ideal is wrong? And there is a movement away from that. But these are things that are treated as real.
Absolutely. But again, capitalism's really interesting because capitalism makes perfect sense if you are a metaphysical realist.
You behave
or
rationally.
Materialist.
Yeah.
Because if the world is material, it makes perfect sense to try and gather as much material stuff as you possibly can because your well-being depends on it. So capitalism is not wrong if you're a metaphysical materialist. If you believe the world is materialism, then capitalism makes absolutely perfect sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
If, however, you're an idealist, you believe the world is mental. Well,
or not necessarily mental, but the world is made up of interactions and
experiences. Exactly. Yeah. If you believe that most valuable, let's put it another way. If you believe that the most valuable things are experiences, not material objects, mm-hmm. then capitalism doesn't make sense to you because
you'd want to make the most pleasurable experiences you possibly can.
Absolutely. And you know what again, we've already said the most valuable thing to human beings. What does every human being want? Well, it's happiness.
And materialism will get in the way of us having positive experiences because I would want to gain or materially gain something, and that leads us to zero-sum confrontations whereby the only way I can gain happiness is by reducing happiness for you. Hence, we enter into a competition environment designed to create exactly that outcome.
Exactly.
I want to maximize my happiness at your expense.
At your expense. Well, again, I'm saying that people are inherently good, but my happiness is more important than somebody else's happiness. I don't really want to put a face on that other person, but you know what we see in terms of the treatment of the environment, the treatment of you know, different countries, of nation states or whatever is look, my happiness is the priority here. And again, I don't really want to think too much about what my actions are doing to other people because
it's easier not to think about that.
It's easier not to, but yeah, the logical consequence of materialism, as you say, is a zero-sum game, which one person has everything and everybody else has nothing.
But so then if you're slightly more if you're coming from the perspective of actually the thing that brings happiness is shared experiences, then you start from a different perspective, which is to say we're going to come together for this experience called sport or physical activity, and how can we maximize the experience? And inherently what you would do then, and this is why children are so intuitive to this, is you want to make it as equal as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And yes, there'll still be an outcome of because the value of the competitive experience is for us to strive together.
Yeah. And
it's the not striving, but the act of engagement together in this experience of play is inherently enjoyable, and you want to make it as enjoyable as you can.
Absolutely. That's the value. That's where we talk about values. That's the value. The value is in the experience. It's in the experience of flow. It's in the experience of connection. It's in the experience of love for the game. It's in the experience of enthusiasm. That they're the most valuable things. That's what people want. And as I say, they're just caught in the illusion that that experience, those feelings come from the material world rather than that they come from the knowing of our own being and knowing of who we really are.
I have, and so going back to this point around the things that I think challenge coaches, I've come into conflict with I've come into conflict with many academics, but there's a few academics actually I've come into conflict with, because when we now talk about coaching and the act of coaching as being based on experiences that individuals want, so based on what they want and what they need.
Yeah.
And sometimes the need bit is actually really about saying that you think you want something, but actually you're going to want something else, right? And I get that, right? And it's helping frame that.
Absolutely.
But I've come into conflict with people, particularly academics who see coaching as something you do to someone. And my view is coaching is about doing your level best to create and devise an experience, a shared experience actually, that another individual is looking for, and my job is to find a way to help them find the experience that they're actually looking for, or kind of already have actually, and it's actually just helping them get out the way of it a little bit. And there are various things I can do to help them get to that place.
Yeah, perfect. So, and again, I would say always to have, if you can, having in the back of their mind what they are looking for is happiness.
Yeah.
Or love or peace or well-being. And how your job as a coach is to try and help them see the beliefs and the things that are getting in the way of them achieving that.
Yeah.
And again, going back to where we started from, again, people believe happiness are going to, it's hard to get across to people that happiness is not in that object or in that achievement.
Yeah, and that's interesting as well, because like, let's take in the context of, say, physical activity and fitness and all those sorts of space, because I've just spent 2 days with at a conference run by UK Active, the fitness industry. And a lot of the narratives there are around if you obtain this level of physical fitness or this level of, kind of, weight loss or health or whatever it is, that you will therefore achieve happiness. And actually, I think the starting point should be, and this is true of any physical activity experience, we're going to provide you with a physical activity experience that is so enjoyable and so intrinsically pleasurable that it's something that you always want to have as part of your life.
Exactly.
And the byproducts of that will be the other things
absolutely
that will obviously give you well-being and contentment.
Yeah.
Like, improved health, or reduced weight, which means we have increased mobility, or less pain, or whatever it is. But they're the byproducts of the experience. Because I always feel like sometimes we're saying you've got to do this, and it's hard and horrible in order to get that.
In order to get that, which is exactly the wrong way round of looking. If we've always got to start from what's the experience that we want. Well, it's happiness, right? What's getting in the way of you seeing that? And as I say, telling somebody that, yes, that I train sort of 3 or 4 times a week, and sometimes it seems like it's hard work and I'm not enjoying it, and then the buzz comes kind of when it's finished. But actually, all that's happening during that time of it being hard is that Sam's getting in the way, because Sam's got some story about how it should feel, and that that Sam should feel happy all the time. Well, that's not what we're saying here. We're saying that we're having an experience. The experience is what it is, and the experience is like that. It ebbs and flows. When Sam gets out the way, the experience just is what it is. There's no judgment about it. There's no.
Okay, so then the role of the coach then becomes, and this goes back to the wants and needs point. The role of the coach becomes one of helping that individual to reframe or place a lens on experience that. So their perception of an experience, and I'm in this bracket, oh, I'm doing this. This is horrible. I hate it, and I would much prefer to stop
to be doing something else.
And what I want is to sit and do nothing.
Yeah.
And so it's about helping to reframe that experience and perceive it, or to change the way the information, the signal is coming to us. So I have this experience that I'm calling pain, right? Yeah. That I'm finding to be I'm creating displeasure from that. But a reframing of that could say that this current experience that you're feeling is that you're calling pain is actually just an experience. You've added a label onto it.
Yeah.
Right.
And the question is who rather than what is the experience, who is the experiencer? What is feeling pain? Who is the one that is feeling pain here? Again, if it's hurting, there's an identification with the body and the mind there. so you've fallen for the illusion, which is that Stuart is this body and this mind. When you're out of that and you're just having an experience, your body is still working hard, and it still might be under stress, but the comparison between how I should feel or I think I should feel and how I actually feel at the moment has gone. So you're just feeling how you're feeling.
Yeah, but if that feeling is inherently not pleasurable.
But again, because of our we've all had the experience of being working really hard or being totally involved in a match and at being at the limits of our physical capabilities, and it being a really enjoyable experience, and having something which physically is kind of the same thing and absolutely hating it and just, I can't wait to stop. Well, the experience, the physics, you'd say, again, back to the material world again, physically the same stuff's happening in the body, but our perception of it, our experience of it is completely different.
Yeah, and it's true, actually, because if I'm in a environment that is playful and has a playful element to it, I'll go and go and go to the point of complete exhaustion.
Exactly.
But if I'm in an environment where it's just me and me and my brain,
if Stu's there, he's not going to be enjoying it. When Stu's not there, the feeling
because
is
Stu's connected with others, involved in an environment, and Stu's
disappeared, and the game is taking place, and there is exertion. There is, from the outside, there is this perception of effort. From the inside, all there is love for the game, enthusiasm, connection, awareness, anticipation, all of those things that we know as the experience of great sport. That's what's going on, but Stu's not around.
If someone says to me, do you want to go for like a 4-mile walk? I'll go, no. But if someone says to me, do you want to go for a 4-mile walk, which is done in roughly 250-yard intervals, punctuated by the striking of an object, I'll be like, yeah.
Let's have some of that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and again, it's like the illusion, the experience. It's the material. You look at that from a material perspective, it looks like the same thing, but the experience of it is completely different.
But that goes back to the point around kind of a little bit about environment and context, because part of the way we can help to reframe is to contextualize differently. A really good example of that, actually, yesterday, again, with these fitness industry professionals, we were talking about the idea of coaching, and actually, funnily enough, I was talking quite a bit about experiences and why experiences are important. And I picked up a stack of cones, and I said to the kind of group, it was like a workshop, so there's about 30, 40 people in the room. And I kept a second, what are these cones? What are they for? Marking out spaces to play with in. Yeah, they can be. What else are they used for? And people came up with, they can be used to play with, they can be used to, and they were all a very, very knowledgeable audience, right? I said, yeah, but I said, what are they generally used for? Like, dribbling round. Right, okay, yeah, okay. So there's a guy in the audience called Bourne Barracore, who's been on the podcast before, runs this fantastic program called Our Parks that does these free fitness classes in parks throughout London. And he said, I said, what do you use them for, Bourne? And we then did a practical activity with a volunteer. Actually, it wasn't a volunteer. It was a guy who was hosting it. And I just said, Jack, you're doing this. Anyway, he put them down. He put them down in a little triangle. And he says, we're going to play a game. It's a fitness game. And it's called Cone Fitness. And he created all these little challenges for Jack to do with these 3 cones. And all he did was, essentially, and he got him to do things like squats and to do things like lunges and to do roly-polies and to do press-ups, but they weren't press-ups. They were a challenge created by this triangle of 3 cones that then became a game. So the reframing came from the way it was presented.
Yeah. It's whenever a coach changes an environment, they're not, again, yes, they're making changes in the physical world, if you want to put it like that, but what they're actually doing is changing a perception. And you don't need, this is the thing, you don't need to change the environment in order for somebody's perception to change. And that's, again, coming back to do that most effectively as a coach. If you truly understand how our experience is created, you're less likely to get caught up in the illusion of a physical world creating that context or creating that perception.
You almost don't have to go that far, though, do you? In the sense that, I mean, you don't have to go to the point of, which is the bit that I've always had a little bit of difficulty with, is this idea of it's not real, it's actually not real, or reality is different from what we perceive it to be. And I get that, and so I think the point I'm trying to make is that reality, whatever that is, or our reality. Sorry, I'm going to get confused now. Reality is really our perception. So therefore, it's our reality. And our reality can change based on either the way we view an experience, just internally. I'm going to, because some people are perfectly capable of saying that running for 100 miles is pleasurable. I can't understand that, but they can, and that's just their reality, right?
Exactly.
Not an objective reality.
Exactly.
Like running for 100 miles is impossible. No, it's not. It's absolutely possible.
But this is what we're saying. We're saying, is there an objective reality? We can't know that.
No, there is just a perceived reality.
There is only subjective reality. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that can change depending on a range of different variables, including the environment, the way it's presented.
Yeah, and again, the variables are almost infinite.
Yes,
and this is important when we talk about, again, because there's so much talk about, it's great that we are putting the player first and creating environments where learning can happen and creating environments that are conducive to well-being. All of that's great, but what you've got to remember is you can have an environment which is, perfect. And two people within that environment can be having a completely different experience of it. One person could be loving it, the other person could be hating it. And the same person can be loving that environment one minute and hating it the other, depending on what's going on with them. And that's where we get, as I say, this focus. If we believe that the material world is the ontological primary, the source of our experience, it makes sense to continually tinker with the environment in order to try and make people feel better when their feelings have got nothing to do with the environment. They look like they have, but actually they don't. Because
does it matter though? Because if we're saying that the only thing is perception, if we're saying that our perception and our experience is really the only thing we have, and by altering or manipulate, and given that I can never connect entirely with what your experience is. No. But what I can do is I can either engage with you using the only communication vehicle I have, which is verbally. Mainly. I can either converse with you around and offer to you alternative ways of perceiving this experience, right? Which can help you reframe. And I've talked to you about this before, like tools and lenses and different ways of reframing it. Or I can change the experience, which then enables you to, not have Sam there so often. Telling you that this is inherently not pleasurable. But that's one of the few things I can control. So sadly, I mean, if I could be inside Sam, I would probably choose to do that. If I could kind of like get this, if I could zoom in there, I'd be like, oh God, Sam, look, get out the way, Sam. I could help to block Sam out so that the experience could actually be there.
I would say that this is beautiful. This is the art of coaching. Is what does Sam believe that is getting in the way of Sam not being there? What as a coach, what can I help? Which of Sam's beliefs can I help him to see that aren't true? So again, that's where, again, I keep coming back to this, but the most important thing in a coaching in coaching is the relationship, because it allows you to have those conversations around what Sam believes to be true. And then it's a matter of stripping away as many of those beliefs as possible, because when Sam stops believing in something, that the mind opens up and he can then have his own insights about the best way to proceed, now that belief that this was the way that I was going to proceed is out of the way.
Yeah, I was trying to interject, because when you use the word true, it's difficult to say that something's not true. It's not that it's not true. It's just it's not the only perception that you can have, which you previously assumed was true.
Yeah.
So it's actually just saying, look, there's alternative views of experience based on the way you perceive it.
Yeah.
So something you used to think was true, now you're not saying it's not true. It's not as solidly perceived as the only route that it once was. Okay. I know that sounds like a really important distinction, but I think it is important. Sorry,
it is important. But as I say, what we come back to, which is there is only one thing that is true, which is
the way we're perceiving it right here, right now.
Exactly that. Yeah. Everything else is a belief or a perception or a feeling or an assumption.
And we can get trapped in thinking, and this is where a lot of pain comes from for people, isn't it? We can get trapped in the idea that a thought has arisen, and that's the and that thought is the truth.
Yeah, exactly. That is the cause of all human suffering. That is the cause of all human suffering. You've summed it up right there. Then I have a belief, I have a thought, that must be true. Therefore, I'm going to do this, and this. That's it right there. And the moment we see that thought isn't true, our perceptual field opens up, and we've got all sorts of possibilities that we never realized that we have.
Yeah, so you could say, for example, you'd say to me, I'm going to, this is horrible, this is painful. And you could either do one of two things. And sadly, the only things we can do when helping other people is external. They still have to go there themselves.
Yeah.
I had an experience of that quite recently, helping somebody overcome some, quite traumatic experiences that had led into some very difficult scenarios for them, and some very negative and potentially, life destructive behaviors. And through a process of discussion and framing things, I suppose, and allowing them to view things in different worlds, they were able to make discoveries about their reality, what they perceived to be their reality.
Yeah.
And were able to think of an alternative that then became, actually, that's an attractive proposition.
Yeah.
I'm only here because of thoughts that I've been having about experiences, and who that makes me, and who that makes me as my reality.
Who I think I am. Yeah,
I think I am. Yeah. And actually, by reframing some of that and saying, and it takes it's quite difficult. So it's very honest, and you have to sometimes go, do you know what? Everything I thought about who I am, just artificial.
Yeah.
Actually, everything I thought about who I am because of my ego, how I wanted to present myself to the rest of the world, actually, that's not who I am. I'm just an experience. Yeah.
Exactly.
And actually, 100%. What if I just as easily choose this thought about an experience? I could go there.
Yeah.
Wow, so that's squeaky ball.
Yeah, exactly. But that's it. Again, I would I've got a problem with the word choice. It's just the what you do when you shift, when a belief shifts, it opens up a space where other thoughts can come to you. That's kind of how I would go with that, rather than that we choose another thought, because you can't choose a thought you don't have, if that makes sense. But I know what you're saying. I think you're 100% right, in the sense that thoughts arise, and our constraints, the way we're constrained in terms of the way we're perceiving. So the lens through which we're perceiving the world, when that lens shifts or alters, other thoughts arise. Different thoughts arise. Exactly.
and this is a very banal example, but a lot of people do this, like amazing creative thoughts arise in the shower.
Yeah.
Because you're in a scenario where other thoughts aren't getting in the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we've all had that experience where we've tried to figure something out and we've just parked it, and then the perfect solution has popped into our heads when we're walking the dog or in the shower or driving the car or whatever. We've all had that experience where, like you say, we've stopped grinding, Stu or Sam has disappeared, and then into the open space of awareness, boom.
Get a load of this.
Yeah.
Did a thing recently, a workshop recently, where, funnily enough, we were using Lego. I know. So we're using Lego and play to build kind of descriptions and metaphors about either challenges or future states or whatever it might be. And we're having revelations through play. And colleagues of mine are going, I never would have arrived there without this. And it's fascinating, isn't it? What you can, how it's a shift of, that all the Stuartness and the Samness has disappeared because we're building.
Yeah. And
then revelations appear, and shared connections appear through the play.
Yeah. And that's what, again, that's what play is for. That's why we do it. Like if you look, little Flo will have been playing with her little puppy brothers and sisters, and learning will have been taking place, but she hasn't got an idea in her mind of what sort of spaniel she wants to be when she grows up, and that this learning experience is going to be extremely beneficial to that. It's just, it's just kind of, and again, like the whole thing around the skill acquisition stuff that's being talked about at the moment, the idea of needing to know how we learn, it's really interesting, and if that's what floats your boat, then absolutely learn more about it. But I didn't know how to learn when I was learning to walk or to talk or to use a knife and fork or any of those things. I just had an experience of that, and learning took place. And I think if we're not careful as coaches, we can get down the rabbit hole where we spend so much time and energy trying to improve ourselves. And again, it's innocent and it's well-meaning. We're trying to improve our intellectual understanding of what we're doing, and how beneficial is that, and what is that a valuable use of our time when we could be doing other things, i.e. coaching, building relationships with people, or spending time with the people that we love, doing what we love doing. That's where I think, as I say, the intellectualization and the scientism of sport and sports coaching, if it interests you and you enjoy it and you've got time to do it, then get as deep into the weeds with it as you want to. But if you're feeling under pressure because of time and you're not doing what you want to be doing, you kind of is that the best use of your time, is what I'm saying. Whereas we can just take it that we learn stuff from our body and our mind are conditioned by experience. Let's look at how we can create or enhance the experience for people and allow the learning to take place. We don't, getting into the brain science of it and all that. Is it useful? I'm not sure.
Well, again, like anything, what that's doing is, in some cases, it's helping us to create it's helping us to maybe have an understanding of what experience is. But sometimes, like you say, that is distracting us because we're filling our rational brains full of explanations. It's distracting us from, and actually I think that is true as well. The more science we're getting, the danger is that we're losing the essence of what we should be doing, which is about connections.
Yeah.
And through connection, shared experiences. And like you said, shared experiences between athlete and coach.
Exactly.
And we are here together and we're having some experiences, and those experiences are going to take us on a journey.
Absolutely.
And go on.
No, I was just going to say, if you speak to any athlete about the coach that they have had the best experiences with, it's the coach they had the best relationship with. And if the relationship wasn't good. You can't coach somebody unless you've got a relationship with them.
Fascinating conversation as always, Sam. You've taken me down a philosophical rabbit hole, and I'm not sure I'm going to be coming out for a while. But I've really enjoyed that because
likewise, mate.
Well, as you know, I'm philosophy is sports philosophy. I think there's actually need a little bit more sports philosophy. Actually,
I totally agree. Yeah,
we have thousands of people doing sports science degrees and nobody doing sports philosophy degrees, and yet I think that's to do with the way we value things. I've sadly got to cut the conversation short for
no problem,
not least of which Flo the Spaniel, who is looking at me forlornly, and I think she might need to go outside really rather quickly.
No problem, mate.
But I know you've been writing a lot, and I believe there's a new book out, is there not?
There is. I have it in front of me. Take Relief, Uncover the Myths and can't even say it. Take Relief, Uncover the Myths and Misunderstandings of Golf Performance is the new book. But the probably the more relevant stuff to this conversation, that's obviously golf based, is sportsprinciples.com, which is the website that I sort of put our stuff on. I work with a couple of professional rugby players and a couple of sports psychologists, and we put stuff out on there and record podcasts. So there's a lot of this sort of stuff around beliefs and values and leadership and coaching on sportsprinciples.com.
Great stuff. I'm sure people will be able to delve further if they've been interested in this. And I know you're always prepared to receive questions and have conversations with people who
Absolutely.
May have had their interest piqued, or they've got questions to ask, or all those sorts of things.
Absolutely. Please, you'd say get in touch via the website, or you can find me, say Google Sam Jarman and golf, and you'll find me, and I'm always happy to talk.
Sam, thanks a lot.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stu.
Thanks for listening to the Talent Equation podcast. If you like the show, then please consider supporting it by leaving a review on your favorite podcast player, telling your friends about it, or even becoming a hero and show your appreciation by becoming a patron. Just head over to thetalentequation.co.uk and click on the Becoming a Patron button at the top of the page.
So there you have it. Wow. Heavy duty. Came away from that one with a proper brain thumper. But yeah, I mean, there's some important questions that we've got to consider in there, which is, and I think this is where, for me, the whole concept of exploring the sports experience through a philosophical lens. I mean, admittedly, it's an area that I have an interest in. I do think we need to stop and think and sometimes take stock of what it is we're actually trying to do here, how we're trying to engage young people, what is the experience that we're trying to provide. And those questions of kind of what is reality, who am I and why am I here, those are three questions that we need to genuinely consider every day in terms of the way we engage and the way we're providing the experiences that we are, the environments that we're looking to create. Well, I'll be pondering that one for a little while. So thank you, Sam, for giving me some restless nights, probably, as I explore my metaphysical idealism versus my materialism. If those of you are interested in, we don't necessarily get as deep as this always, but if you're interested in getting deeper and exploring your coaching journey and improving your practice, there's a fantastic group of intrepid learners called the Conclave who gather together on a monthly basis and help to co-create solutions for each other and solve each other's problems. I've got some spaces available, so if you're interested and you're available in the British summertime evenings, the first Monday of the month, then head over to the homepage, click on the Become a Patreon button, and you'll see the option to join. A couple of people just recently joined. We're having some very interesting and vibrant conversations, so look forward to welcoming you there. So have a great week of coaching, and remember, ditch those drills.